Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, the blessings and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon all of you. And I'd like to start by congratulating you for making it this far, for being in the first video, for starting the course, for deciding to do the course. There's a lot of people who struggle to commit to anything, and making a commitment to spend 4 weeks in this course is actually something which you should be proud of. You should be happy about the fact that you've managed to make this commitment. And inshallah, as we go through, we'll have a lot of breakthroughs, we'll have a lot of transformations with the way that we pray our Salah, inshallah. And the title of this course, as you probably have seen, is to transform Salah from a burden to spiritual ecstasy. And I want you to really understand that, why we have that title. And in this video, I'm going to explain the content that we're going to go through for the next 4 weeks. So what we've got is, the main aim of this course is to primarily remove the burden. Now, many Muslims, when they pray, they consider their prayer to be kind of just something which they do, get over and done with, and then get on to something slightly more exciting, slightly more interesting. So this course, the first thing it's going to do, the first 2 weeks of this course, is actually going to focus on removing the burden element of our prayer. So if at the moment you pray and you consider it to be something which you're doing, but you kind of also want to move away from it, you want to kind of quickly get it done and move on to something else, then the first 2 weeks will really help reverse that burden feeling. So Salah comprises of 2 things. Salah comprises of certain things which we have to say, and there's certain postures which we have to do. So in the first week, in week 1, we'll focus on the du'as which we recite, some of the things which we have to say. And we'll notice how at the moment, the way that you say them, you might be saying them so quickly that really you're saying them and just hoping to move on and get on to the next thing. Now you might be just starting Allahu Akbar and then Alhamdulillah, and just going through the rhythm. And not really thinking about what you're saying. So in the first week, we're going to bring a lot of attention towards some of the things which we say. We're going to bring attention to how we use our breath to say these things, and primarily we're going to bring awareness to how much of a burden we may consider these things to be at the moment. Just the things which we say. That's week 1. Week 1 focuses on how we consider the du'as and the Quran that we recite to kind of be a bit of a burden, or we're just trying to move away from it. So instead of trying to move away from it, we're going to really slow down and understand what we're saying, and really say them with a lot more awareness, and really learn how to say the prayers of our du'a properly. And we're going to learn especially the most commonly repeated phrase, which is Allahu Akbar. We're going to practice on that, really hone in on that. Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Ala. And we're going to develop some anchor points, some points of reference, so that we can actually notice how much concentration we have and how much we're considering our Salah to be a burden. That's week 1. And in week 2, what we'll do is we're going to bring awareness to the posture of our prayer. So the postures that we have, sometimes we're standing up, sometimes we're bowing, sometimes we're moving from standing up into prostration. All of these are different postures of our prayers. And sometimes in the posture, what will happen? These postures will become a burden. So we'll be doing the posture, but it will just be like, we'll just be desperate to get into the next posture, or we're desperate to move on and finish the posture. So what we'll do in week 2 is we'll bring awareness to the posture, and bring awareness to how the posture as well as the dua is meant to be something which we're meant to lean into, we're meant to take time with, we're meant to actually enjoy. So in week 2, we'll just bring awareness to how much of a burden we may consider some of our posture to be, and we'll move on to integrate the breath and integrate the du'as which we learn in week 1 into some of these postures. So now we have slightly stronger points of reference for actually maintaining our awareness and actually developing the things that we're saying inside our prayer. That's week 2. So the first 2 weeks primarily, like I said, is going to be just awareness of how much of a burden we may consider the du'as to be, the things we say to be, and how much of a burden we may consider the posture to be. Yeah, so we're just going to consider that, and as we bring that awareness there, we'll start to realize that actually there's an awareness which we need to bring here. We need to learn how to do the posture properly, and we need to learn how to say the things properly as well. So that's going to be the first 2 weeks. Now, the title of the course, Transforming Salah from Burden to Spiritual Ecstasy. Now, as we move into week 3, we're going to start appreciating how by integrating the words that we say and the posture along with our breath and actually concentrating, how doing these things properly actually enhance and develop our connection with Allah. They actually make us so much more closer to Allah. They make us aware of Allah. And now what we do is we actually start to realize that we may have considered our salah to be a bit of a burden before in the things that we're saying. Now, instead of just saying things, we actually realize that the things we say connect us with Allah. Instead of just moving through the postures, we actually realize that posture, every one of the postures connect us with Allah. And when the postures are integrated with the prayer, when you integrate the ruku with Subhana Rabbi al-Azim properly, you'd realize how that's so ideal for connecting with Allah. Now your prayer stops being just something you do, and it actually becomes something which connects you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in week 3, we'll really bring that awareness home, that your prayer is not just something you do, it's not just a burden, it's something which deeply starts connecting you with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we really start feeling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Does that make sense? Okay. Now we're going to move on to week 4. And week 4 is going to be the culmination. It's going to be kind of where we come together and almost finish the course. But what's going to happen is we're going to realize that all of the things that we do in our prayer actually come so naturally, and they're so perfectly designed to connect us with Allah. And because we've got rid of the burden in week 1 and 2, we won't be forcing as much. Now, there's actually 2 main obstacles. To appreciate why week 4 is really powerful, there's 2 main obstacles which most Muslims have when they're praying. Number 1 is a sense of knowing. Is we think that we already know how to pray perfectly. So this is a massive obstacle. And the second thing is, because we think we know and we believe that we're meant to know, we have self-judgment. We judge ourselves. So if we open up to the idea that maybe I can learn how to pray better, or I don't know how to pray, we think, well, actually I do know how to pray. So we judge ourselves, and we don't actually allow ourselves to even open up to the idea that we can improve our prayer and become much deeper inside our prayer. So in the first 3 weeks, by bringing this awareness to the burden, and by gently leaning in to learning how to recite the du'as better, and by gently learning how to do the postures better as well, we'll actually bring curiosity here. We'll ask ourselves, while in the first 3 weeks of the course, we'll ask ourselves some questions which will deepen the way that we pray, deepen the way that we do the postures, and will actually allow us to be more curious about the way that we pray. One of the problems that we generally have is because we think that we know, we're very rigid, and we think we have to do it like this and we know how we do it, and we don't actually open up to the idea of becoming better and learning more. So in week 4, what we do is we realize that prayer is actually about being curious about the way that we pray. And by bringing this curiosity, we realize that we might not know how to pray properly, and every time we pray, we actually learn more about praying. And we realize that we're not actually meant to judge ourselves to do the perfect prayer, we're just meant to try our best. And the quality of bringing curiosity and softening our gaze, and not being so rigid with the way that we pray, it actually allows us to, every time we pray, just improve the way that we pray. We're not so obsessed about doing it properly. Now we're coming to a state of learning and actually developing our prayer. And this is actually really, really important, because as we bring curiosity, this means that our prayer becomes a lifelong journey of learning. Even after we finish the 4 weeks, we don't feel like, okay, now I'm perfect at praying. Now you feel, okay, now I know how to improve my prayer every time that I pray. So we're able to take the awareness of our burden and start having some reference points, start having those anchor points, so that we can actually start concentrating, start improving. And then as we move into week 3, we realize that we're actually connecting with Allah. And in week 4, we realize that this whole thing is actually our natural state. It's perfect the way that it is. We don't actually need to force it as much. It actually happens very, very naturally. We just need to be curious and allow ourselves to open up to the divine relationship which we have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's just an overview of the content, the 4 weeks, what we'll generally study. So we'll start off, week 1 will be the words, how to speak properly, how to say the words properly. Week 2 is the posture. Week 3 is the awareness that this connects us to Allah. And week 4 is that it becomes natural and that we don't have to force it as much. In this video, we primarily spoke about the power of curiosity, how asking the right questions gets us in the right direction. And what that does is it actually gives us the power. It gives us control over our prayer. It makes us realize that we're in charge of how we pray. And this leads on to our next video, which is about autonomy, which is about being in charge, and how that's also very, very important, and how that's structured into this course. So Jazakallah for watching all the way to the end. I'm going to recommend that any insights that you've had in this video, you share them in the comment section here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.